A young man named Alexander was a knight. One day he rode to the village of Estracon on the orders of His Majesty. He was happy when he was told that they were almost there. Max, a colleague, said that he could have done the job himself. Besides, he did not want to complicate the life of the commander, who already had a lot to do. Alex smiled and told him not to worry. After all, His Majesty had personally asked him to go. The village did not pay taxes, so they came here. Max assumed that the village had been attacked by bandits, and that was the reason. However, everything seemed to be in order. Alexander had a certain reputation, so when the villagers saw him, they immediately started whispering. Isn't he the head of the Royal Order of Knights from the capital who fought the dragon? The dragons disappeared, but monsters appeared in their place. A man whispered. However, there are rumors that he is very unusual. He was able to defeat a werewolf by himself. The second villager continued, I heard that the capital palace is decorated with the head of a griffin he hunted. Then why did such a person come to our village? Does he know that it lives in our forest? The child of the dragon. Alex did not understand the whispers of the villagers. It seemed to him that the villagers were not very happy to see him. Max answered him. A knight commander has come from the capital to a village like this. Obviously, that will be the main topic of discussion. So he wanted to go alone. The man said that he would go to the center of the village and talk to the person in charge of taxes. Alexander wanted to go with him, but he was refused. Because if he is there, people will get worried and think they are being interrogated. And they will be too afraid to answer questions. There's nothing dangerous here, so he can rest. So Alex was left alone. He was a little tense, but then he sighed and said to himself, His Majesty sent me as an escort because he really thought there was danger here. Now I must have a good rest to calm down. It was noisy around, so he decided to take a walk in the forest, especially since his friend would be back from his walk by the time he got home. As time went by, Alexander realized that he was lost. He did not expect the forest to be very deep. He still had hope that he would find the right way. He was distracted from his thoughts by the rustling of leaves. He thought it was an animal, but when he cleared away the leaves, he saw a blond man lying on the grass. He was pleased and asked him if he was from the nearby village. He asked him if he could show him the way back to the village because he was lost. He apologized and explained that he had been walking for 2 hours. The stranger got up and came closer. He put his nose close to the knight's neck. Alexander was embarrassed and pushed him away. He asked why he did it. The stranger spoke his name. Then he repeated it confidently. You are Alex. The man replied that he was, but he had asked for something else. Alexander explained that he had frightened him with his behavior. However, he would be grateful if he could be shown the way out of the forest and not to bother him again. The stranger did not listen and, squeezing his hands, leaned forward and began to kiss him. The man happily said how glad he was to see him. He had been waiting for him for so long, even though he could recognize him after all these years. The stranger told me that he no longer lived in the village because he was thrown out after Alex left, because the villagers found out that he was a monster. He couldn't hide it anymore, but now he is happy because he doesn't have to hide anything around him. At first, Alexander did not understand him or why he was so strong, but after the stranger took off his cloak, everything became clear. A man's horn and tail appeared before his eyes. Alexander realized he was looking at a dragon. He was puzzled by this fact. He had thought that all dragons had moved to other continents. The dragon embraced him affectionately and repeated his name. Alexander tried to stop it and said, Perhaps you are mistaken. There are so many people of that name in the world. But the dragon assured him that it was definitely him. His scent is the same as before. Shocked, Alexander tried to pull himself together and think of a way to deal with the situation. Meanwhile, Max returned from his investigation to find that Alex still hadn't returned from his walk. Alexander was able to get the dragon off him and clarify the situation. He explained that he had come to this village for the first time and did not know the people there. And even if he did, he shouldn't bother them. The dragon sadly suggested that he could not remember because he was small. The knight continued to deny it and reminded him that he had to get back before dark. The stranger went on to say that he remembered him, his name, and the smell of his body. He asked him to at least listen to his story and try to remember the past. It was hard for Alex to refuse. The dragon looked at him with the look of a sad dog, the man thought. that he would be a bad person if he refused now. So he agreed and sat down beside him. The dragon thanked him sincerely, and then he began to speak. He had not been a dragon from the beginning. First, he lived as an ordinary human child in an ordinary family. His mother was a pure dragon. Later, she told his father to hide her true nature. But one day she left, and his father died. Due to the intense stress, he gradually began the process of transforming into a dragon. As his body ceased to resemble a human body, the attitudes of those around him became increasingly cold. They spoke with horror. As the years go by, he is becoming like his mother. It's terrible that such demons still exist. If we drive him away, people from other villages will speak ill of us. The dragon did not know what to do. He thought the villagers would cripple him and bury him quietly in the forest. Some people hated him because his mother was responsible for the death of their relatives. It was painful for them to see a living reminder of their deaths. The boy was too young to bear their reproaches and accusations. To avoid the eyes of men, he spent the whole day in the forest, returning home only in the evening. On one of these days, he met him. The boy asked him if he was lost. He introduced himself as Alex. He got no answer, so he kept on talking. He said how unusual his eyes were and asked if he could touch his horns. He said he was from the capital and had no one to play with. The dragon was confused that someone had come so close to him. He asked if the boy was not afraid since he was a dragon. Alex assured Clyan that he was not afraid, and he promised to protect him if anyone ever bullied him. That's how he became his only friend. Soon Alex had to return to the capital, so he promised to come back when he was older. The knight listened carefully and apologized. He remembered nothing at all. The dragon was sad, but he wanted to take the knight to the village as he had promised. He said he didn't want to be a bother and leave a bad memory. Alex didn't want to give up so easily, so he asked if there was another way to remember. He was sad because Clyan had been waiting for him for over a decade. A little nervously, the dragon told him that there was another sure way to remember. He had to pour his mana into him, but for that they had to touch their bodies, very close. Alex thought they could just hug. The dragon asked him if he agreed. If he stopped the process, the mana might damage his body. The knight was embarrassed, but agreed. And then he asked to be taken to the village. After they finished, Clyan asked if he remembered anything. Alex guiltily put his hands over his face and admitted that he didn't remember anything. Dragon said in surprise that he had never heard of this method not working. The man felt guilty. He asked if he was really Alex. After all, he had to get back. Clyan said confidently that he definitely was. Besides, his body was weak now because of the mana penetration, so he had to take the responsibility. The dragon asked him to take care of him for a few days until he was back to normal. Alex thought that he should stay close to the dragon if he was going to tell the capital about it, especially since there was a chance that he would be somewhere else if they split up now. Clyan was different from other dragons. He did not hate humans. Moreover, he could use magic and other spells. So if he asked His Majesty nicely, there was a chance that he could join the Royal Knights. And right now it's hard for him to move, so there's no reason for him to refuse. He would tell Shio everything because he was sure of it. The knight left Clyan and used the magic stone to contact Shio. He told him about the situation and asked him to cover him for a while, but without waiting for an answer, he cut the connection. Shio did not like what he heard. He angrily crushed the rock. Meanwhile, Clyan remembered that they had only played together in the forest before. So this is the first time Alex will be in his house. He shyly said that his house was small and simple, but make him feel at home. The knight was impressed by his understanding of the word small. As they entered the house, Alex finally realized that he had forgotten something. His armor. He didn't have any armor. He remembered that he had forgotten to put it back on in the forest. Clyan thoughtfully warmed a cup of milk for Alex. He asked how he felt. The man replied that his back hurt a little, but he was all right. The dragon said that this meant that the magic had been successfully transmitted. It was strange that there was no effect. They needed to repeat the mana transfer process to see if the memory transfer worked on him. Alex choked up when he heard this. He suggested that they try it later when he was stronger. He started to say that he would try his best to remember everything until he was better. But he added with a smile that there must be other ways to remember everything. Dragon was very happy to hear this. Alex was so friendly. The man would be on good terms with him, especially if he stayed in his house for a while. and this was a good chance to become closer for the future. Alex asked what had happened to the second horn. Did it have anything to do with him? The dragon immediately became somber. The man realized he had touched on a sensitive subject, so he said he didn't have to tell him if it made him uncomfortable. Cleon shyly replied that it did indeed concern him, but he didn't want to tell him so as not to embarrass him with sad moments. Alex was touched by his concern. He reassured the dragon and said, "Everything is fine. I want to know all about you." Cleon began to tell how he wanted to find him. He thought that if he got rid of his horns, he would be able to move freely, but when he cut off one, nothing changed. Then he realized that he would never become a human being. After that incident, the horn stopped growing. He did not know if it was because he had cut it off when it was just starting to grow, or if there was some other reason. The dragon quickly said that they didn't have much value to him, so it was okay. Alex gently touched his face and spoke to him. "I'm sure it hurt." Cleon confirmed his words and assured him that everything was all right now. He doesn't need to cut anything off now because Alex is here. He kissed his hand gratefully. Alex blushed and changed the subject to calm his heart, which had quickened its rhythm. He asked if there were other ways to get his memory back. The dragon suggested that they go to a place where they used to play together. The knight liked the idea and got up to go. However, he felt a sharp pain in his back. Cleon suggested that they go tomorrow morning, since it was already too late. The man agreed. Dragon helped him lie down to make it easier. He wanted to sleep on the floor, but Alex objected. He said he was ashamed to make him sleep on the floor in his own house. He insisted on sleeping together on the bed, especially since it was big enough for two. Cleon finally agreed. Late that night, the dragon confessed to the knight. He had no hope of his return, but now he was glad that he had waited. After saying good night, Cleon fell asleep. When Alex awoke in the morning, he saw Cleon's face. He was surprised at how close they were. He suddenly remembered that he had forgotten to tell Max that he would not be returning to the hotel. He could only wonder if Shio had warned him. Meanwhile, in the village of Estrizon, Max found the person responsible for the money. The man did not want to help him at first, so Max, trying to be polite, had to scare him a little. He told him that he was the royal treasurer. Therefore, if the man did not help with the investigation, he would imprison him for high treason. Thus, Max learned that the reason for the unpaid taxes was the sharp rise in the price of farm implements. However, the prices had risen only in Estrizon, while in the capital, everything was the same as before. The man realized that something was being hidden. Max wrote everything down in a report, but he noticed that the women were whispering something as they watched him work. He talked to them and learned something. Once there was a big fire in the village in which the son of the starosta was involved. This incident was hidden from outsiders. The girls advised him to ask the starosta about it. Max analyzed that the fire and the starosta's son do not explain why the village is isolated. So there must be some kind of secret. He found the starosta's house. The elder let the man in when he learned his position. He realized that it would be difficult to fool a man from the royal court, so he began his story. He once had a son who grew up and fell in love with a foreign woman. The woman was quiet and serene. Everyone around them rejoiced at their love. They got married, and eventually they had a child. They said that this child was the result of their love, but it was the beginning of trouble. One day the child stopped looking like a human being. The mother knew that such a process was inevitable, so they took him to another continent. She had to reveal her true identity. His son asked the villagers for help to stop them, but to no avail. She burned everything that could hinder her and left the village. For some unknown reason, the child she intended to take with her was left behind. After that, the villagers hid the child and raised him quietly. He was a descendant of dragons, but he also had human blood. The chief said he was willing to be punished for his actions. Max understood why they did what they did. However, he had to report all living dragons to the capital. The man said he would see to the safety of the village, but they would have to give up the dragon. Later, using a magic communication stone, he told Shio everything. He added that he had not seen Sir Alex since last night. Therefore, he thinks that the man has found the dragon and is following it. Sir Shio told His Majesty everything, except the fact that Alex had contacted him. Instead, he said that his whereabouts are temporarily unknown. but there is a possibility that he will meet the dragon. His Majesty was furious when he heard about the dragon. He ordered Shio to personally verify the truth of the report, and if it turned out that there really was a dragon, the king would personally destroy it. Meanwhile, Alex and Cleon went to the place where they had played as children. This method did not work either. The knight remembered nothing. The dragon was sad again. Although it was a memorable place for him, it was still just a forest. To cheer him up, Alex suggested creating new memories here. Cleon smiled and agreed. The knight was eager to try other options. He asked if they would go to the village. He thought it would be a good opportunity to meet Max and tell him everything. Dragon immediately became somber. He explained that they were not allowed to see each other because he was a foreigner. Besides, he had no desire to go down to the villagers. Alex quickly calmed him down and told him that he did not have to go back to the village for the time being. But he began to worry about how to contact Max. He had already used his communication stone to talk to Shio. Cleon said he remembered his wish to go to the village. He asked him to wait a bit, and then he could take him to the city later. The man agreed. Alex realized that it was illogical to go back to the village now, while the dragon still did not trust him. He decided to have Shio inform Max of his situation so that he could concentrate on the dragon for now. They returned home. Alex found a picture by chance. It was a family portrait. Cleon said that it was a portrait of his family. The man looked at the picture carefully. The knight said that he looked very cute when he was little. He asked why he didn't hang it up. The dragon explained that it reminded him of his mother. He did not want it hanging where he could see it. He remembered what he had said about his family. His mother was a dragon. Therefore, she did not think like humans. When his father tried to tell the villagers about her nature, she crushed him. And then she asked her son if he wanted to go with her. It seemed that all the love and years she had spent with her husband were worthless to her. Cleon could not understand what she was thinking at that moment. But all he could feel when he looked at her was fear. Maybe she was disappointed in him, so she flew to another continent alone. Sometimes he wondered if he had thrown away his humanity and gone with his mother. Would he have been able to do what she had done with his father? Alex stopped his stream of disturbing thoughts and said, "Not all children should be like their parents, especially since you are half human. It's okay. A dragon is a dragon, and Cleon is Cleon. Therefore, you should not be afraid of your mother's legacy." Cleon was touched by Alex's support. He kissed him and asked if he could continue to transmit the memories. The knight laughed and said he should have asked before kissing him. The dragon apologized. Alex allowed him to continue, but added that he should make sure the memories came back. Cleon promised to do better this time. He hugged the man and said happily, "Even without memories, you are the same as before. You keep saying the same things." When little Alex arrived in the village, he noticed that someone was watching him. He heard the rustling of leaves and turned his head toward the forest. His father let him go for a walk and he ran. The boy found him quickly, for the little dragon was not very good at hiding. He spoke to him and introduced himself as Alex. Cleon realized that he was from the capital because none of the village children spoke to him. He was surprised when the stranger asked if he was from the capital and confirmed his guess. He explained that he had just arrived today and noticed someone hiding behind a tree, so he was curious. He was visiting and hadn't found any friends to play with yet. Cleon said he should not be around him. He is not human. So he should find other friends in the village. They might get into trouble if they were seen together. The boy took his hand and said that he was no different from him. He thought he had scales on his face, so he covered it, but there was nothing there. The boy tried to explain that he had an attractive appearance, and he was not afraid of it. The dragon pushed him aside and said, "No matter what you say, I am not a man. That is why everyone in the village is afraid of me and hates me. I cannot even go there, because they know that I am not human. They will hate me too." The boy replied in confusion, "I don't understand why I should be afraid of you. Even though you are a dragon, you are still you. Even though you have horns, you did not try to eat me and you look like a child. But you are stronger than you look, and you will probably become even stronger later. My hand is already red from your blow." The dragon began to cry, so the boy tried to calm him. One evening, Alex wondered how long dragons lived. Cleon replied that the book said more than 100 years. The boy was happy. He explained that this meant that even if he grew up, he would not change. Sometimes Alex said strange things that the dragon told him. The boy laughed and said goodbye. The next day, the village was very noisy. Cleon heard the villagers discussing the departure of the people from the capital. The dragon ran to find Alex. He feared he would never see him again. The boy hadn't told him anything about leaving. Clyan was running without looking at his feet, so at one point he tripped over a rock and fell. But he managed to find his friend. Alex asked him excitedly if he was all right when he saw his appearance. The dragon didn't listen to him, but looked down and started to talk. He didn't want to convince him to stay, but at least he wanted to say goodbye. Alex listened and then wounded his hand to bind it to the dragon's wounded hand. The boy apologized and explained, "I did not want to leave without saying goodbye. Because one day I will come back here when I grow up. Your life is longer, so you will be here even after years have passed, right? Adults make such promises all the time. Blood cannot be fooled, and this kind of bond cannot be broken. So instead of saying goodbye, let us make a promise. I will definitely come back to see you, Clyan." After the memory retrieval technique, the men rested. Alex asked if the dragon had cut off his hair. The man replied that he hadn't touched it because he didn't want to change in any way. Besides, it was the same as before, and he recognized it. Clyan stood up abruptly and began to dress. He felt someone pass through the barrier. The dragon told him to stay inside because it could be dangerous. He prepared himself and left the house. Alex assumed that it could be Max or Shio because it was unlikely that the villagers would come here. The man began to dress. For a second, he wondered if he should take his sword with him. In the end, he decided to take it. Alex was in a hurry to find the dragon. He heard a scream and prepared to attack. He saw Clyan and a stranger nearby. The man begged to be released. He explained that he was simply lost and that he was in his territory. The dragon silently began to reach out for the man. Alex misunderstood his actions. He thought it was trying to use magic to kill him. He raised his sword to stop it. Clyan showed him the right way and told him to leave. The man thanked him and ran off. The dragon looked at Alex and asked him why he had brought the sword. The knight began to justify himself, saying, "It was just like that. It was dangerous." Clyan asked if he would hit him with the sword if he hurt someone. Alex struggled to find an answer. The dragon said sadly that he would never do what he despised. This misunderstanding made him very angry. The man started to apologize, but the dragon stopped him and told him to go home. Meanwhile, Shio hid behind a tree to look for Alex. As he watched them, he did not understand why Alex was protecting the dragon. He assumed that they had become close. In his opinion, the man did not know how to handle dragons. Shio decided to report everything to His Majesty right away. Alex started to feel nervous. He could not believe that he had betrayed his trust. He wondered if the dragon's attitude would change now. Suddenly his cloak grabbed him and pulled him away. Clyan turned toward Alex when he heard a noise, but there was no one behind him. Alex fell onto his back in pain. He asked, "Who are you?" But he heard no answer. "You seem to be all right, brother." The man was surprised to see Shio's face. He asked, "How can a knight commander walk around naked and defenseless?" Alex tried to explain, but his brother did not want to hear excuses. Alex tried to tell how he had befriended a dragon, but Shio told him sternly, "You can't talk to dragons. You can't negotiate with them like you do with humans. It doesn't work that way. All dragons must be destroyed. No exceptions." The brother said he would not tell the king that he had tried to protect the dragon. It was the least he could do for his family. He wondered, however, given his appearance, how the man would reassure him. Alex hesitated. Could he talk about Clyan now? He didn't know about Shio's strong hatred for dragons. Perhaps it would be difficult to convince His Majesty now. Before he told him, he decided to ask his brother if they had been here before. Meanwhile, Clyan stayed on the path. He heard a rustling and turned to see Alex. The man explained that he had gotten lost following him. Dragon replied that he thought the man had left him. He added that they should speed up before sunset to avoid getting lost. They returned to the house. There was no longer a comfortable atmosphere, only tension. Alex tried to start a dialogue, but the dragon stopped him. He said he was leaving. The knight asked where he was going in the middle of the night. Clyan did not go into details, just sent him to bed and left. The knight felt ill. It seemed that the dragon had a hard time being around him. He closed his eyes and involuntarily remembered the conversation with his brother. Alex asked if his brother remembered coming to this village in the summer when they were young. Shio was stunned by the answer. He said they had never left the capital when they were young. All night long, Alex could not sleep because of his excitement. It was morning, but Clyan had not returned. The man realized that no one would be comfortable around a man with a sword pointed at him. Alex tried to think of something to do, but it was hopeless. He was hungry, and a brilliant idea came to him. He will cook food for the dragon, they will eat together, and then the dragon will forgive him. The man was full of energy from his plan. Clyan returned home and smelled a pleasant aroma. The knight was happy. The dragon had returned in time. He had finished cooking. The man explained that he wanted to thank the dragon in some way. He prepared a meal from the ingredients in the kitchen. He sat the dragon down at the table. Alex smiled and waited for the reaction to his meal. His brother and the king were fussy eaters, but even they liked Alex's food. He thought that everyone would feel better after a good meal, but his hopes were not realized. Clyan praised his food and thanked him, but his mood did not change. It was hard not to notice the difference in the dragon's behavior. He had always been so emotional, but not now. Alex did not understand how he could bring back the usual Clyan. His mind was filled with disturbing thoughts. He imagined the king ordering the dragon's execution because Shio had called him cruel. Then an image appeared of Clyan saying his last words, how he stopped trusting people the moment Alex raised his sword at him. He stopped himself and decided not to think about the worst possible outcome. Besides, he was not the Alex Clyan needed, so he had to take responsibility and make the dragon happy. Later, the man decided to try again to cheer Clyan up. He suggested that they go for a walk and try to get his memory back. He was sure that during the walk, the dragon would begin to recall pleasant memories. The dragon sadly replied that there were no more places he could take him. Alex didn't know if it was true or if he didn't want to go out. He was too upset. The man did not give up easily. He offered to talk, but was rebuffed again. The knight was confused. It seemed as if the dragon had lost all interest in him. Clyan didn't even want to answer him anymore. Alex was getting more and more worried about how he could get the dragon to return to him, as he had at their first meeting. Suddenly it hit him. In their first meeting, the dragon's sympathy had not been directed at him. Clyan was waiting for his only friend he trusted. So Alex had been under the illusion all along that the dragon's favor was directed at him, and so now he had to give something back. After all, they had been strangers before. The realization that Clyan was not really interested in him upset the man. He decided to push these thoughts aside so as not to lose heart any further. He had to become the Alex the dragon was waiting for if he wanted to be forgiven. Alex approached Clyan again and suggested that he try the mana transfer method again. The man excitedly explained that only the dragon had tried to help him get his memories back before. So now he wanted to take the initiative. Clyan agreed. But this time the man remembered nothing. After all, you can't bring back memories that never existed. Alex apologized to the dragon. He was ashamed that the dragon had wasted his powers. Clyan sadly said that they should find another method, or accept the fact that it is impossible to bring back memories that have already been lost. Alex felt nervous. This was not typical behavior for a dragon. If they stopped trying, the dragon might realize that Alexander was not the person it was looking for. The human suggested that they rest and talk about his life in the capital. The dragon admitted that it was very interesting to him. Alexander was pleased with the man's response and began to talk enthusiastically. Upon his return to the capital, Alex began training to become a knight. His father watched him train. He liked hearing his father's praise, so he studied hard, and he quickly became a knight. He also told us about his brother Shio. He also wanted to become a knight, so they practiced together every day. Alex described him as a good person, although he did not know what thoughts were driving him at the moment. Meanwhile, Shio remembered how his father used to tell them stories about dragons. They didn't exist on the continent anymore, but there were stories in the books about how they fought humans. Once upon a time, in a time of war between humans and dragons, there was a king. He had a beloved queen and a daughter. But the kingdom was troubled by a war over territory between the humans and the dragons. As a result, the king began to kill all dragons for the sake of his family, his people, and his kingdom. In the end, the humans won. But while the king was at war, the capital was attacked. It was a dragon who wanted revenge. The queen fought for the capital, but fate was not kind to her. The woman won, but her wounds were fatal. In the chaos, her daughter disappeared, and the dragons were driven from the continent. But the king was left alone. Little Alex asked if the king had found happiness. His Majesty replied that he was sure he had, but it was only a story. Little Shio guessed that his father was talking about himself, but he did not tell his brother. When the king sent Alex on his mission, Shio asked, Was it necessary to send his brother on such an unimportant investigation? The man explained that it was just an excuse for him to rest. Shio said that his brother was still his favorite. The king disagreed, saying that he loved them equally. Moreover, he had offered him a vacation, and he had refused. The king said that although he had trained them as knights, they were still his sons, and he was proud of them. Shio said not to love him too much. They were still his knights. But the king replied that no matter what, they were his children. Shio did not like what he said. Shio had other feelings about the king. He used to find men with silver hair for the night. When he was with them, he imagined Benjamin in their place. Shio had looked up to him since childhood. Until now, Benjamin was absolutely everything to him. He wanted to fill the void in his heart. At the end of such meetings, Shio would erase the boy's memories with a magic stone. After all, no one should know about his preferences. The man was about to leave the silver-haired man's house when the communication stone suddenly glowed. It was strange. He was not expecting a call from anyone. When he connected, he saw his brother. Alex greeted him and noticed a man in the background who looked familiar. Shio asked him to wait. He went out and continued the conversation. It was the same conversation when Alex told him that he had found the dragon. The man was so enthusiastic about the dragon that it annoyed Shio. Dragons had killed the king's family, and he wanted to be friends with one. It was absurd. Shio went to see the king. He was in the communication room. He thought Alex would call soon, but he hadn't heard from him. Shio decided not to tell him about Alex and the dragon for now. He thought he would wait until his brother caused more trouble. He told the king not to worry. He asked permission to see for himself how his brother was doing. After hearing Alex's story, the dragon said he could feel how much he loved his family. It was clear from the way he spoke about them. The man agreed because they were special to him. Whether they were of the same blood or not, they were his family and therefore important to him. Alex admitted that Cleon was important to him as well. He felt that they had known each other forever. Dragon said thank you. He was very happy to hear it. He said he was special to him too. Cleon wanted to get up, but he felt weak in his body. Alex asked if he was okay. Cleon replied that he was fine. On the second try, he made it and went to the bathroom. It was strange that he went to the bathroom in the middle of the conversation. He told me not to come in. They had already seen each other naked and undressed. Alex was a little shocked and thought he was being too pushy. Meanwhile, Cleon was filling the tub. He looked at his hand, which was throbbing with pain, and he saw the scales that continued to spread over his hand. He decided to bandage his hand temporarily so that the scales would not be visible. Alex was worried, so he knocked on the door. When Cleon had finished with his hand, he opened the door. The man asked why he had closed the door and what he was doing there. The dragon replied that he was just drawing warm water. He offered the man to take a bath first if he wished. Alex asked why they couldn't have a bath together. After all, they were friends. At first, Cleon refused, but when he saw Alex half naked, he agreed. A few days later, in the forests of Estracin, Shio contacted His Majesty and reported the situation. He said that Alex was now in contact with the dragon, and it seems that he has lost contact with him because the man is in the dragon's thrall. The king ordered Shio to return to the village to the treasurer and wait until he himself comes to the dragon with the knights. Shio himself did not understand why he was doing this, although he knew of Alexander's great love for dragons. He thought this might be a problem in the future. It was not clear, however, why he lied. Meanwhile, Alex took a bath with Cleon. He looked at the water and thought, what would the real Alex look like now, as he had remained in Cleon's memory? They probably looked alike, if the dragon had confused them. His thoughts continued to revolve around the real Alex. For a second, he wished he was in his place. The man blushed at his own fantasies. The dragon noticed this and asked if he was all right. The man explained that it was just that the water was too hot, and he was hot. Alex decided to ask if he would be willing to stay with him, even if his memories never came back. The dragon replied confidently, I want to be with you, and it won't change anything. The human breathed a sigh of relief. Cleon realized that all the man's efforts were due to his fear of leaving him. Alex admitted that it was true, but he was calm now. After the bath, Cleon carefully carried a sleepy Alex out of the room in his arms. The human apologized again for the incident in the forest. The dragon calmed him down and told him not to worry. He gently placed the man on the bed. He said firmly, if your memories really don't come back, I will find another way. During the night, while Alex slept, the dragon drew magic runes in the courtyard. In the morning, the man awoke full of strength and energy. Alex noticed that the dragon no longer looked gloomy. This made him happy. He thought it would be great to be together without trying to recover his memories. Clyan asked if it was upsetting that the only places he could go were home and the forest. Alex thought the dragon wanted him to go to the village. He thought that then he would have a chance to meet Shio and try to convince him not to hurt the dragon. Or he could call His Majesty and tell him about the situation personally. However, if Shio saw him with the dragon, it would be difficult. Clyan apologized and said, "I'm sorry, but I can't let you go to Estrizen. There is no telling what the others will say when they see us together. It's not that I don't trust you. I just don't want you to go alone." Alex realized that the dragon did not want to be alone again. That's why it was acting like this. The man said that he would not leave him now and asked what Clyan wanted to do. The dragon was happy when he said that he wanted to show him something. Clyan took his hand and led him outside. Alex saw a magic rune for long-range teleportation. The dragon explained that he had been working on it for him since early this morning. The destination is the village of Akrani, which is quite far from here. Alex thought it would be safer to buy the communication stone and not meet Shio. He said he liked the idea. It would be like going on a trip. Alex held out his hand to Clyan and they happily set off.